Premier Protein remains the gold standard in convenient nutrition, but slowdowns in its brand portfolio counterpart should be concerning. Fortunately, something always remains to be harvested, so let them not be idle for much longer. So I'll provide further details on what I meant in that introductory statement a bit later in this content, but on August 6th of 2024, BellRing Brands updated the public markets by releasing its fiscal 2024 third quarter earnings report that covers the period ending June 30th of 2024. I'll be utilizing the financial information within those documents along with notes I took while listening to the earnings conference call and any relevant publicly disclosed news to obviously update you on the recent performance of the brands in that functional CPG portfolio, but also use it as the backdrop to discuss market insights within the active nutrition formats of liquids and powders. But let's start off with a quick rundown of the BellRing Brands fiscal 2024 third quarter revenue numbers. Net sales for BellRing Brands this quarter were $515.4 million, which was up an incredible 15.6% year over year, which is comprised of a positive 18.4% increase in volume, but was offset by a 2.8% decrease in pricing and product mix. If we're looking at a quarter over quarter perspective, BellRing Brands saw its revenue increase just over 4%. If you wanted to break those sales numbers down by product format, RTD shakes made up 80% of this quarter's total sales, powders were 17.5%, and then the remaining 2.5% came from other formats like nutritional and protein bars that are sold internationally under the PowerBar brand name. Looking at the quarterly sales by brand, Premier Protein was up 19.8% year over year, which was coming from a hefty 19.2% volume increase and a small increase in pricing and product mix. If we focus on just the Premier Protein RTDs, that product format saw net sales increase 18.5% year over year, driven by a 19.4% increase in volume, but a 0.9% decrease in price and mix. Now shifting to the Dymatize Nutrition brand, it saw quarterly net sales decrease 2.6% year over year. This was driven by a 4.4% increase in volume, which was more than offset by a 7% decrease in price and mix. Volume gains came mostly from strength in the international markets. But as I normally do in these quarterly BellRing Brands content pieces, I want to dive deeper into firstly the Premier Protein RTD shakes business activity, and then also cover the protein powders from both Premier Protein and Dymatize. Overall, the RTD liquid subcategory of convenient nutrition has shown extremely strong growth during the last 4 years compared to historical rates. And while Premier Protein has benefited greatly from that, it has also faced its share of episodic challenges during these last several years, from severe capacity constraints that limited available flavor variants and usage of trade promotions to even a voluntary product recall. But Premier Protein has been able to overcome each efficiently, as they are some of the best operators within the functional CPG space. In terms of retail consumption growth by channel, the largest for Premier Protein RTDs would be wholesale clubs, which was basically flat year over year during this quarter. But the brand's other major sales channels made up for their disappointing performance within wholesale clubs, with mass retail growing 26.3%, grocery up 16.6%, and e-commerce growing 23.7%. Overall, Premier Protein RTD's consumption trends for both tracked and untracked channels were up 9.6% year over year. Yet, that respectable quarterly performance still dragged the last 52-week consumption trend down from just over 30% last quarter to now just over 25%. But Premier Protein does have the number one velocity SKU across the entire RTD liquid subcategory, and 80% of its products ranked in the top third. With fiscal Q2 including the New Year, New You period, and Premier Protein executing on 2 club promotions in 1 quarter for the first time in 3 years, this quarter rightfully focused on rebuilding trade inventory levels. That improvement in stock, along with increased distribution, helped Premier Protein end the quarter with total distribution points reaching all-time highs. Household penetration for the entire Premier Protein brand reached an all-time high of 18.9%. This recent brand household penetration growth is being fueled by promotional activity restarting, thus bringing deal-seeking buyers back towards the Premier Protein brand. Moreover, it's important to note that Premier Protein does lead the entire convenient nutrition category in household penetration and outpaces the next RTD liquid subcategory competitor by 6 percentage points. Premier Protein market share spiked to around 24% during last quarter's wholesale club promotions, but has settled into about 21% of total RTD liquid subcategory of convenient nutrition, with steady production across the full range of flavors, plus new launches and promotional activity returning. Premier Protein should see its market share climb even further to all-time highs throughout 2024. And before shifting this content into the ready-to-mix powder side of BellRing Brands, I wanted to make a quick note on a few non-beverage Premier Protein formats. While not a material impact to the business yet, licensing efforts in frozen pancakes and cereal have provided key indicators that could prove Premier Protein has platform brand power that extends beyond the healthy living sets in retailers. And I'd add the recent announcement of Premier Protein and the waffle makers extending their licensing partnership into pancake and waffle mixes as further supporting data. Now, let's shift into examining the recent BellRing Brands performance of its protein powder SKUs. And just like the RTD liquid subcategory of convenient nutrition, the same underlying drivers have created strong growth within the ready-to-mix protein powder subcategory format. Powders are becoming more mainstream, and category proliferation has created an environment where more consumers are purchasing both everyday and performance nutrition positioned protein products at grocery stores and mass retailers. But that doesn't mean the steep growth trajectory of late within the powder format at those large retail channels will go on forever. Because while I don't mind mixing up a protein shake, it would be silly to overlook the extra friction point for a lot of at least new to this category mainstream consumers, thus causing a lower household penetration ceiling compared to RTD liquids. I don't think we are anywhere near there just yet, but it is interesting that ready-to-mix powders growth has slowed over the last 52-week period. Also, the bulk of protein powder sales are still going to primarily occur online. So I wouldn't apply that same lower ceiling to a multi-channel retail environment. With the BellRing Brands portfolio containing a strong player in both subcategories of convenient nutrition, ready-to-mix buyers, aka performance and everyday, it's benefiting twice from this marketplace tailwind. But let's stick with the Premier Protein theme and break down the performance of that brand's protein powders first. And actually, it has grown to such a stature that BellRing Brands leadership has decided to start providing us with graphics that show the format's retail takeaway performance in various large sales channels. As you can see, Premier Protein powders are charging hard, up just under 44% year over year in the quarter, behind brand investments, distribution gains, and strong velocities. Premier Protein powders continue to bring new mainstream consumers into the category, creating growth at both mass retailers up 61% and e-commerce up 48%, but also above average categorical performance in grocery up 18.5%. Furthermore, BellRing Brands leadership stated on the earnings call that internally they're getting extremely excited about the opportunity emerging with Premier Protein's powder SKUs. They have proven to be both incremental to RTD shake sales and beneficial towards growing the brand's household penetration. Premier Protein powders reached 1.8 points of household penetration, but don't scoff at that number because it has already surpassed the same metric from Dymatize, though that's not a like-for-like comparison because Premier Protein is a much more known convenient nutrition brand overall that's now getting deeper into powders. Alternatively, the Dymatize brand is a lot narrower, focusing on the more sophisticated performance consumer. But maybe this is a good time to transition into analyzing the recent performance of the Dymatize protein powders. As mentioned earlier, categorical growth within large retail channels has greatly benefited a brand like Dymatize that's strategically aligned from a sales channel strategy perspective. Dymatize is now the top-selling or second-ranked performance protein brand in most of its key retailers. That being said, performance has been sliding the last few quarters, and all sales channels besides grocery saw negative retail takeaway growth this quarter. And I want to make note of the sharp decline in wholesale clubs. While this is totally anecdotal at this point, I believe the launch of Costco's private label whey protein will be quite impactful to a brand like Dymatize. Yes, leadership will say that Dymatize is a premium brand, thus not competitive with private label, but you have a very fixed merchandising in wholesale clubs for protein powders outside of when they flex up during the New Year's period. But for the last 52-week period, the only blemish comes from the specialty channel. And I know that might be shocking for you old school sports nutrition industry professionals that remember Dymatize from the 2000s. But the shrinking sales channel is no longer a major priority for the brand, and I fully expect that specialty will continue to struggle from a comparative standpoint into the future. Overall, despite the quarter softness, continuing marketplace tailwinds, such as performance protein powders becoming more mainstream and overall category proliferation, help Dymatize sustain its total distribution points and all commodity volume percentage that have been hovering around all-time highs for the brand. Yet, I'm not sure that setup helps lessen the worries around what it might take strategically to get Dymatize back into consistent growth mode. But before I cover the information regarding the ambiguous introductory statement, let's quickly shift into an operational update for BellRing Brands. Gross profit margin in the quarter was 36.8% of net sales, which was up an astounding 630 basis points year over year. This higher gross profit margin was driven by net input cost deflation. In terms of sequential quarter over quarter gross profit margin, that was 340 basis points higher. Additionally, BellRing Brands has been executing on a multi-year Premier Protein plan, partnering with the biggest and most reputable players in the industry to make large CapEx investments, which has now given them a scalable, regionally diverse supply chain that should enable many years of robust growth. And since we are on the topic of investments, how about I start clearing up that introductory statement by dusting off a fan favorite topic. Believe it or not, a whole year has passed since I even mentioned mergers and acquisitions in a quarterly BellRing Brands content piece. But the perfect time to talk again about M&A and brand portfolio architecture is now for several reasons. Firstly, and most broadly, consumers can't seem to get enough protein. The focus on high protein diets started in those shadowy niches of sports nutrition and weight management, but now there's an increasingly diverse consumer cohorts that possess a heightened awareness around the value of this essential nutrient. Secondly, and related, that demographic diversity being interested for different reasons, that is making protein a battleground category as it proliferates across the entire grocery store. Thirdly, the Dymatize growth story from the last few years that allowed BellRing Brands to shift M&A needs from must-have to nice-to-have, that seems to be ending now. Additionally, you had a major convenient nutrition brand portfolio competitor just make a strong mergers and acquisition move, acquiring the fastest-growing protein RTD's liquid brand, OWYN. And then finally, plant-based protein sales have again been strong, holding their own against milk-based counterparts because top products have advanced, in my mind, to a point where consumers feel they are near parity in terms of flavor and texture. So what does this all mean? The same thing I referenced in 2021, that BellRing Brands needs to find a leading plant-based protein brand to fill a portfolio gap. Taking the lead from OWYN, I believe there are a few plant-based protein brands that are focused on building their own core customer that's outside the typical natural channel shopper, with product and branding in line with conventional protein products. The best option to acquire right now for BellRing Brands, at least in my mind, would be Koia. Like what Simply Good Foods is doing with OWYN, it would be, at least in my opinion, an easy bolt-on that gets almost instant lift. And I know what BellRing Brands leadership is thinking though. Premier Protein has tons of untapped product innovation potential, and we can easily extend it into plant protein. But I think broadening inputs, especially in RTD format, is a mistake. Yes, Premier Protein has a lot more upside in the brand, but the portfolio overall lives and dies on its performance. So I'd keep it focused on the competitive milk-based protein beverages market that has an interesting market setup brewing over the near term. But I hope you enjoyed this YouTube video. If you did, consider hitting that like button to support me. Also help me get to my new short-term goal of 4,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. I'd love to see you join me on this journey, but we need to fix the fact that slightly more than 90% of you at this point that are watching this YouTube video are not subscribed to my channel, and that makes me extremely sad. But I do want to thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.